Hello, I'm Osukarui and I mostly speedrun obscure N64 games. These games generally don't have a lot of speedrunning documentation, so in this series I want to document my personal experience when speedrunning these games. I'll therefore cover the history of the game as a speed game, talk about speed strats, interesting movement tech, and glitches, along with the world record progression for the game. I hope you enjoy. So, in the end of the year 2021, after the whole Indiana Jones speedrunning revolution, which I covered in my last video, I wanted a break from indie and started browsing for new N64 games to run. The game Starshot Space Circus Fever had frequently caught my eye when browsing for N64 games, and I had started playing it a little bit a few times before, but never really committed. This time though, I decided to go for it, and Starshot, which I will be calling this game in this video, became my next speedrunning project. Now, before we start talking about my ventures into the game, let's start at the beginning of Starshot's speedrunning history. The first mention of speedrunning this game I could find was on an old Speed Demos Archive forum about a speedrunning event where a bunch of runners were going to swap some obscure games to speedrun. Players would then form pairs and send each other an obscure game for the other to run. The players Nes Kamikaze and Scenic Reverie formed one such pair, where Scenic Reverie sent Nes Kamikaze Starshot to run, and Nes Kamikaze sent Scenic Reverie Hercules the Legendary Journeys. Now, before Scenic Reverie sent his copy of Starshot, he made one video with a rough idea for a route to finish the game, which Nes Kamikaze could use when preparing for the speedrun. Ironically though, Nes Kamikaze never ran the game, so Scenic Reverie's route concept run, uploaded on the 16th of January 2011, became the first world record the game would see, clocking in at 2 hours, 17 minutes and 45 seconds, and it would stand for many years. This was of course not really any sort of optimized speedrun, if you can even call it a speedrun, but it is the oldest full game run through the game in one sitting with video evidence we know of, so technically the first world record. Now, let's talk a bit about what Scenic Reverie needed to do to finish the game, and just how this game works in general. The game is, like many games of the era, a third-person platformer collectathon, where you play as a character called Starshot. Starshot works in a space circus and needs to perform various tasks and collect various attractions to compete with the rivaling space circus. The levels in the game are essentially different planets you visit. The first level is called 10 Suns, and after beating 10 Suns you gain access to the second level, which is called Killer Expo. Now, in the second level, the goal is to acquire something called a TV robot, and after you finish the second level, this TV robot gives you access to other planets in the solar system. So, after level 2, you have more freedom to choose in which order you want to play the levels. You can then choose 3 different levels to play: Technomummy, Primitron, and Ultima Crash. While playing all of these levels, you need to be collecting these red pyramid-shaped collectibles called megafuels, scattered throughout the planets, and after you collect 100 of those, you gain access to the last planet level in the game, Earth. Then, after playing through these 6 planet levels, you gain access to the final boss level, which is on the rivaling space circus ship, Virtua Circus. You can then fight the final boss and beat the game. And this pretty much sums up a typical playthrough through the game. Now, about the main movement in the game, the most important aspect is the triple jump. Similar to how Mario 64 works, Starshot can perform a series of jumps, and if they are chained together, they will get progressively higher as you jump. Meaning the first jump is the smallest, the second jump goes slightly higher, and the third jump goes the highest. After the third jump, the height remains the same. These jumps can be buffered by simply holding the A button, so they are extremely easy to perform. These jumps play an integral role in speedrunning the game, since knowing what type of jump is needed for each gap in the game becomes crucial if you want to go fast. However, jumping is slower than running, so you want to keep all jumping to a minimum. Other than the jumps, there isn't really any real movement tech to talk about, so to summarize, the movement for the game is incredibly simple. Now, Scenic Reverie did his run in 2011, and then for a few years nothing very interesting happened in regards to Starshot speedrunning. But in the year 2016, a player called Oblivion, also known as Redmoth, rediscovered the game for himself and started glitch hunting the game. Although playing on the PC version of the game, he found a bunch of notable skips. The first one was to skip most of the first level in the game. In the first level, 10 Suns, you are meant to traverse these islands to get to the enemy ship at the end. On the way there, you have to press a button located here to deactivate the defense barrier around the enemy ship's legs, located here at the end of the level. Oblivion discovered that you could actually swim right from the start of the level to the end. Normally, you can't swim very far because these waters are filled with huge fish that will eat you. Each fish has a designated area to patrol, so by swimming on the border of these areas, Oblivion could enter one fish's area, which would then start following him, but enter the other fish's area before the first fish reached him. The first fish then lost interest in him and the second would start following him. He could continue juggling the two fish back and forth until he reached the shore on the other side. Now, at around halfway through the level, you're meant to collect these yellow capsules which allow you to fly. Every capsule collected equals around 2 seconds of flight time, so the more you collect, the longer you can fly. Once on the other side, he was able to collect the flying capsules located here and fly right to the button. You can then die to respawn at the checkpoint at the end of the level to finish the level normally. The death warp was not discovered by Oblivion, but a player called Arciano, which I will talk about in more detail later in the video. Now, Oblivion also found a big skip in the second level in the game, Killer Expo. The normal route through the level goes something like this. You first make your way across these platforms to this building, where you activate a platform to reach the next section of the level. Once there, you continue into this building to collect an energy ball, which you then bring back to the building visited before. Bringing the energy ball there will free some aliens that will in turn drive a tank located here into a wall, allowing you to access this section called the Missile Center. So you go back up to the area before and continue to the tank. There you solve some puzzles to get here to get an access card, which then lets you enter the final section of the level. Now, Oblivion found out that outside the missile center, located here, you can actually jump on top of this guard and then onto the gate to reach the top of the wall and enter the missile center early. So if we don't need the tank to enter the missile center, that means we don't need to free the aliens, which in turn means we don't have to get the energy ball at all. The route then looks like this. The route starts the same as before, enter this building to gain access to the second part of the level, but after that you can proceed directly into the missile center, instead of first getting the energy ball, which is a long auto-scroller platforming section, and also making this long and tedious backtrack to free the aliens. In the level Techno Mummy, he would also find a way to skip a section of the level. Normally, after reaching the uppermost section of the level, you are supposed to enter this building in order to get a speed upgrade. You could then go to this area where there's normally a door that blocks your path before you can reach it, but with the speed upgrade you can enter the door before it closes. Oblivion, however, discovered that you could fly under the platform and the door to squeeze in between the two and get to the other side, skipping having to collect the speed upgrade at all. So after reaching the uppermost area, you could go directly into the last part of the area. In Ultima Crash, Oblivion found a very big skip. The intended route through the level looks something like this. You start by entering this building in order to activate a bomb that allows you to get past this tower here. You can then access this mountain-shaped area, which grants you access to another bomb, allowing you to get past this tower here. Once there, you get access to yet another bomb that allows you to get past this tower and access the final part of the level. Oblivion found a way to shorten that significantly. Starshot is always accompanied by two non-playable companions, a rocket called Will Fly and a small robot called Will Fall. Oblivion discovered that by playing to here in the level and then jumping off the edge, Will Fall would respawn next to Starshot. He could then maneuver Will Fall right to the edge here and then perform a triple jump on top of Will Fall to get enough height to reach this platform. With this, he could access the side of the tower you normally shouldn't access until activating a bomb to destroy it. Now remember, the bomb here allows us to get past this tower, which leads to the final section of the level. So with this skip, we could skip having to get the first two bombs in the building here and in the mountain area here. So after activating the bomb here, you could jump off the edge to respawn at this checkpoint and proceed to the final part of the level. Now, Oblivion only ever did runs in a PC category called F12%, which I will not be covering. All of the any % speedrunning history for this game has been performed on the N64 version, which I am focusing on in this video. It wouldn't be until the start of January 2017 that a runner called Sekul would be the first to do proper any % speedrunning attempts with Starshot. We can see in his video footage that at some point he achieved a run clocking in at 2 hours, 5 minutes and 13 seconds. This run has no video, but his next run does. On the 22nd of January 2017, he achieved a run clocking in at 1 hour, 29 minutes and 37 seconds. Sekul used many of the previously mentioned skips, although not all of them. He was pretty much the first runner to have a somewhat planned route through the game, but it was clear he had not given too much thought to the megafuel route, as in which 100 megafuels to collect in order to access Earth. Sekul also found a few more skips. At the end of the level Killer Expo, you have to fight through a battle zone and destroy a bunch of enemies. Once you do that, a boat will appear to let you enter the next area. Normally, if you try to enter the waters without spawning the boat, these high-speed missiles will hit you and kill you in one shot. But Sekul found out that simply by jumping high enough and making sure not to go too far on each jump, the missiles became confused and didn't hit you, so you could actually cross the waters pretty easily, skipping having to do any fighting in the first section. And then in Ultima Crash, he found another skip. Normally, after you reach this end section of the level, you have to first get rid of a few ghosts outside the house so another ghost can come and open the house for you, and then you have to enter the house to fight some enemies and fight a boss. After defeating the boss, you can exit the house on the other side to finish the level. Sekul found a method to skip not only fighting the ghosts outside, but also skipping the entirety of the inside of the house. On the side of the house, there is this platform leading to seemingly nowhere. From there, you can see the end of the level where you would normally come out after going through the house. Sekul found out that by luring Willfall all the way to the end of the platform, it was just barely possible to jump on top of Willfall to reach the wall of the house, and by landing on the wall at just the right angle, you would get a slight forward boost, allowing you to land on the other side. Then Sekul could just get the checkpoint and jump off the edge to die. Once he respawned there, the ghost dog, which is the level's objective, appeared, so you could finish the level by collecting the ghost dog. The downside to this trick is that it takes a lot of time to lure and push Willfall all the way to the edge of the platform. And then the jump itself is also very tight, meaning if you failed the jump, you lost a lot of time. So Sekul did not go for this in his runs. And then lastly, in the level Earth, he also found a way to skip a large section of the level. On Earth, you have to manage your way across these force field barriers all around the level. The intended route through the level looks something like this, and a big part of the level is basically an auto-scroller, waiting for the force fields or enemies to move around. So there's a lot of waiting in the intended route, which makes it incredibly slow. Oblivion found that you could use this enemy right at the start to jump over the barrier and then make your way around most of the level, and then use this level geometry to jump back over the wall and inbounds. He could then play the level normally from there. The route then looked like this and skipped roughly the first half of the level. Sickle also started using a very important speed tech called a slope jump. Slope jumps are an incredibly strange and fascinating speed tech that allows you to jump on slopes and thus allows you to cross gaps which are not intended to be jumped across. Take this slope in Primatron, for example. Normally, to cross this gap, you have to guide this chicken thingy to this sapling, which turns the sapling into a tree, which you can then shoot to turn into a bridge. However, with a slope jump, you can simply jump into the slope on the side here, land on the slope to perform a slope jump, and then jump to the other side. Looks incredibly simple, but it personally took me a long time to figure out how this actually works, because sometimes when you jump into the slope jump will not work. For the longest time I tried jumping into these slopes, and sometimes Starshot would jump and other times he would just refuse to jump and slide down into the lava to die. I had no idea why they sometimes worked and why they sometimes failed. Well, it turns out you have to charge your slope jumps by sliding. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? Well, every time Starshot slides on something, he gains the ability to perform one slope jump. He can then go and jump on a slope, and as soon as he jumps on the slope, the charged slope jump is exhausted. So if he tries to perform another slope jump right after the first one, he will just slide down the slope. This makes it so you can only perform one slope jump at a time, and prevents you from chaining many of them together. When I mentioned I had not known why they only sometimes worked, that was because unknowingly I sometimes had a charged slope jump and sometimes didn't. This is also why in modern speedruns you will see runners jump once into slanted walls and slide briefly to charge a slope jump before performing the actual slope jump to reach the other side. Now, we don't really know whether this mechanic was intended by the developers, or if it was intentional, why they did it in the first place. Maybe the developers found that Starshot was sliding too much and wanted to stop that, but then found that allowing him to jump on slopes all the time broke the intended gameplay, so they used this system as a compromise. But who knows? For some reason this mechanic is there, and I for one find it very bizarre, but also very fascinating in a speedrunning sense. Now, this would be Sickle's only submitted speedrun to speedrun.com, but it wouldn't take long until the game saw its next runner. Around 3 months later, a new runner called Arciano would enter the scene, and he would really take the game to the next level. Arciano started by getting a run clocking in at 1 hour, 23 minutes and 13 seconds on the 23rd of April 2017. Following that, he kept working on the game, and in just under a month, Arciano set 8 more world records. Arciano had a goal, and that goal was no less than a sub 1 hour run. Well, the final of these 8 runs did just that, and on the 18th of May 2017, he set a time of 57 minutes and 51 seconds, improving the world record by more than half an hour from the previous runner. How did he do this? Well, most of it was just cleaning up the movement and getting cleaner runs. But he also implemented a lot of the skips mentioned before, plus finding a few more new skips himself. In Technomummy, he found a much more consistent method to get past the robot blocking the door at the end of the level. Instead of flying under the robot like Oblivion had done, Arciano jumped into the side of the robot to just barely squeeze in between the robot and the wall. In Oblivion's method, if you failed it, you would fall down and die. But with Arciano's method, when you failed, you at least had a chance to save it and land back on the platform. Although that does not always work. In Ultima Crash, Arciano found another skip. Remember that house at the end of the level that Sickhole had found a way to skip past but was too difficult for runs? Well, Arciano found a skip located inside the house. Normally you had to fight a few enemies to start the boss fight, and you could then jump off the boss to the top of the level to gain access to the lever to open the door to get back outside and end the level. Arciano discovered that with a precise slope jump on this roof, you could actually jump right to the top without having to start the boss fight at all, so he also didn't need to fight any enemies. Now, there was one more big skip that Arciano found just before his departure from the game. It was the biggest skip he found, and ironically, it was the only skip he did not use in his runs. Arciano didn't just find a way to skip a part of a level, no, he found a way to skip an entire level. Remember how your objective in Killer Expo, the second level in the game, is to fetch a TV robot, and this robot in turn grants you access to the rest of the planets to complete the game. Well, Arciano found out that when finishing the first level, 10 Suns, you could turn off the console or exit the save file via the menu during the level end cutscene when Starshot is being transported back to the ship. Then, if you re-entered your save file, re-entered the level and exited the level normally one more time, the TV robot would suddenly appear without having entered Killer Expo at all, granting you access to the rest of the planets right after the first level. We have no idea how or why this works, but for some reason it does, and we speedrunners are grateful for it. Now, the reason Arciano didn't use this was because using this would require pretty major rerouting for the game, since all the mega fuels normally collected in Killer Expo would now have to be collected elsewhere. Arciano had been doing a lot of Starshot speedrunning in both any and 100%, and was getting tired of the game, and without any real competition, he simply decided to leave this glitch for any future runners that might appear. Well, that future runner turned out to be me. Around 3 years after Arciano's departure from the game, I picked it up. Arciano had left a well-documented post on speedrun.com about his unused glitch, so I took it upon myself to make a new mega fuel route for the game. The biggest difference to the new route was in 10 Suns. Remember how it was possible to skip from the beginning of the level to the end? Well, now that we needed to collect more mega fuels, we didn't do the skip, but opted to play the level the way it was intended, to collect more mega fuels on the way. The only skip in the level then involved a jump from this cliff face to reach this platform, since if you ran through the platform normally, you would enter a cutscene trigger located here. However, by jumping from the cliff, we could bypass the trigger. After some rerouting, I learned the game and did some runs, and on the 23rd of December 2021, I claimed the world record with a time of 57 minutes and 8 seconds. It's hard to estimate how much Arciano's Killer Expo skip actually saved, but it was probably over 5 minutes, so there was still room for a lot of improvement for the category. I kept going, and on the 30th of December I got a time of 54 minutes and 12 seconds. And then on the 2nd of January I got a 51 minutes and 16 seconds run. In these runs I added 2 noteworthy new time saves. The level Primitron has 2 sections. First, you have to play through these circular platforms, and then secondly, you play through this big spiral-shaped section of the level. I found a way to skip a part of the platforms. Normally, you have to herd these chicken-like things across these platforms towards these saplings, which will result in the sapling turning into a tree. These trees can work both as bridges across the platforms, and they can also fling you across to the next platform. I found a way to skip one of these chicken herdings by jumping onto one of the flying cars which frequently zip around the level. By getting this checkpoint and then jumping off the platform to die to reset the car flying cycles, you could simply hold the A button to buffer jumps. While jumping, you could then keep count of your jumps and get into position at the edge of the platform with the right angle. And on the 9th jump, all you had to do was hold forward and Starshot should land right on one of the flying cars and take damage. And if you are still holding A, it resulted in Starshot getting a second jump. which could then get you across to the next platform. The other time save was in Ultima Crash and was based on an old video I found from Oblivion. On the PC version, he had found this strange glitch where when you sequence break the level in the right way, the geometry starts behaving very strangely. So if you stand on the right spots, Starshot will get continuous jumps in the air until he reaches a certain max height where he will stop gaining height. We originally thought this was something that only worked on PC, but I found that it worked to some extent on N64 as well. With this, I was able to play the level until I reached this point where you normally activate the bomb, but by standing on the exact right location, I could use the glitch to gain extra height and then jump down to this platform below, right at the last section of the level. This skipped having to activate the bomb at all and death warping and backtracking to go around to reach the final area in the game. So the route then looked like this. Okay, so at this point I was going for a sub 50-minute run, but I knew it would be somewhat difficult, so luckily I found a pretty big skip to assist with that goal. In the last planet level, Earth, there are these force field barriers that kill you if you touch them. One day I was messing around in the level and suddenly when I ran at one of the barriers, Starshot simply ran through one of them without dying. I knew immediately that if we could replicate this, it would have major implications. Let's revise the route through the level. First, we go out of bounds and then run around the level to re-enter the level here, where we can finish it normally to reach this spot at the end of the level. Well, if we can go through the force field, we don't really need to re-enter the level here and can simply run straight to the end here. So, after some testing, I managed to get through the barrier and the route then looked like this. Just start by jumping out of bounds and then run straight to the end through the barrier. This ended up saving over 3 minutes. Why this works, we don't really know for sure, but it seems that on a certain frame after starting his running animation, Starshot goes slightly further forward than on other frames during his normal running. So if you position yourself just right and start running from the correct spot, Starshot's hitbox will be on one side of the force field on one frame and the other side on the next. At least that's the current theory. We don't have a very good understanding of what makes this trick work, and since it's incredibly precise and loses around a minute if you fail, it can definitely be a run killer. Using this, I then got a run clocking in at 50 minutes and 26 seconds on the 9th of January, but despite the 3-minute time save, I was still having trouble getting a sub 50-minute run. Now, during this time when I was streaming, my friend Nathan is bored would sometimes watch the streams and eventually took interest in the game. He would first play through the game casually and then ultimately learn the speedrun. Together, me and Nathan lapped out a lot of the tricks, ran the game together and even made a Discord for the game. One day, I woke up to a new world record set by Nathan. A 46 minutes and 32 seconds run set on the 16th of January 2022. So Nathan didn't just break the 50-minute barrier, he completely smashed it. Now, Nathan had put a lot of work into optimizing the Mega Fuel route. Nathan had timed picking up every Mega Fuel and compared it with not picking it up, both for single Mega Fuels and bundles of Mega Fuels scattered throughout the game. With his research, we finally had concise data on which Mega Fuels were actually the best to pick up. Now, this does not mean every runner chooses to collect the same Mega Fuels, since going for some of the fast ones can be risky and you want to make a route that suits your abilities and just how aggressive you want to be. However, with Nathan's work, we had a much better understanding of the game, and it felt like the game was reaching new heights of optimization in regards to speedrunning. Now, Nathan had added in 2 more tricks into the run, which I had discovered based on some of Sekul's old videos. I had always found these tricks too risky to go for in runs, but Nathan didn't hesitate. Firstly, at the end of Primitron, when you enter a certain trigger, a bird will start moving towards the end of the level. Normally, you're supposed to herd a chicken thing to the other side, to raise a tree to get up to this ledge, which starts a cutscene in which the bird is killed. After you reach the ledge and play the cutscene, you can then proceed to the other side of this lava river. After looking at Sekul's video, where he demonstrates that you can jump on the bird when it's crossing the river to get up to the platform which triggers the cutscene, I took the trick one step further and discovered you could actually jump twice on the bird to jump all the way across the lava lake. Now, this trick is fairly difficult, but with the right setup it's very doable and actually very fun to perform. However, you only really get one shot at it because the bird only crosses the gap once. By jumping on the bird to reach the other side, you can skip the cutscene with the bird death, saving around 20 seconds. And better yet, now that we didn't play the cutscene with the bird dying, we had a speedrun where saving the animals was actually faster. Nathan's board also implemented one more trick in Ultima Crash. Remember that method Sekul had found where he uses Willfall to jump across this gap to skip the house at the end of the level completely? Well, using Willfall was very slow and also very difficult. I, however, managed to find a way to do it without Willfall by utilizing this pipe below the platform. Instead of trying to jump all the way to the platform on the other side, I found out you could instead jump up against this wall, and by grinding up against the wall, Starshot will gain slightly more distance. I would then lean to the left and land on the pipe below the platform. Once there, I could walk to the end of the pipe to jump and clip through the ground to reach the top of the platform. Now, the pipe is not flat, but is made up out of two opposite slopes. The slope closer to the player when making the jump is not walkable, so if you land on it, you will slide. But the slope further away from you is walkable, so you can land and stop there. With this, you have two options. Either you land directly on the walkable slope and continue from there, or you can have a charged slope jump so you can land on the non-walkable slope once and slope jump on it to land on the walkable slope. This latter method is easier because the jump is shorter and you have more time to maneuver Starshot to land on the right spot. But the problem with it is that you only have one proper shot at it, because if you use your charged slope jump but fail to land on the walkable slope and die, even if the checkpoint is fairly close so you can reach the area very quickly to try again, by that point you will not have a charged slope jump because you spent it on the previous attempt. So you will have to go right for the walkable slope, which is a lot harder. And unfortunately, there are no slopes in the vicinity to recharge the slope jump. Now, Nathan had only spent a few days running the game and had already crushed the goal I had been going for around 2 weeks. But I was determined that before putting this game to rest, I would beat Nathan's record. I have ran a few games with Nathan, and having him running with me has often helped me overcome things that I thought I couldn't do. Like these more difficult tricks I just explained. I initially thought these skips were too difficult for me, but he showed me that with a bit of practice they were very doable and actually very fun to implement once you got the hang of it. So thanks Nathan for always pushing me further than I think possible. With this I kept going, and finally on the 31st of January I got a time clocking in at 44 minutes and 4 seconds. Now, at this point my sum of best was around 41 minutes, and I knew there was still a lot of movement optimization out there to be explored. So I knew that a sub 40-minute run was actually very possible. But with my 44-minute run, I was satisfied and stopped running. Around 1 year later, a new runner emerged by the name of Kefka14. Kefka is not unlike myself in that we both enjoy finding obscure N64 games to try to optimize, and I guess it was only a matter of time before our paths crossed. Kefka would set his sight on optimizing this game further, and with Kefka came another runner called Cyanide Gunner, who took interest in the game as well. Kefka started learning and researching, and one day when Kefka was streaming and Cyanide Gunner was in the chat proposing ideas for ways to break the game, they found a big skip together. In the level Technomummy, when you reach this part, you are normally supposed to shoot and destroy 6 electric beams found all over this big building. By shooting these 6 electric beams, you deactivate a force field located here at the bottom of the building. After you deactivate the force field, you gain access to this yellow flying capsule, which in turn allows you to fly over to this platform and proceed flying to the next section, the top part of the level. I had earlier found a super precise method to jump across this gap by luring an enemy and jumping on it to reach the other side, but this was not even remotely possible for full game runs and had taken me tens if not hundreds of attempts with an emulator and save states. However, jumping across the gap was not our only avenue of glitch hunting. There was also this force field, which normally went down after shooting the electricity. If we could get to the other side, we could grab the flight capsules and continue to the next part of the level. This force field seemed to have different properties than the ones on Earth, so we could not clip through it by just running at it. Cyanide Gunner, however, proposed using Starshot's invisibility frames to get through the force field. By luring this enemy and standing close enough to the barrier, you could let the enemy hit you and push you through the force field so that Starshot only gets hurt by the enemy and not the force field. Kefka then tried Cyanide Gunner's idea and it worked. This allowed us to skip turning off the 6 electric beams and therefore saved around 1 minute. Kefka then did some runs and shortly thereafter he got a world record, clocking in at 43 minutes and 2 seconds on the 1st of March 2023. Kefka was determined to push this game to the next barrier, the sub 40 minutes. We knew this was very possible, but nobody had truly cleaned up and refined the movement enough to have a shot at getting there. But just as Kefka was about to start his grind, something unexpected happened. Only 14 days after Kefka's world record, I woke up to a new world record, and not just any world record. No, it was a 39 minutes and 5 seconds run, performed on the 15th of March 2023. Only it wasn't Kefka, or me, or Cyanide Gunner, or even Nathan. No, it was our old friend Arciano. Arciano, now armed with a real cartridge on console instead of his old emulated runs, had felt inspired to run the game again, now that 3 other people had beaten his old time. So he had come back after a 6-year absence from the game and reclaimed the first place position, and this is where the world record stands at the making of this video. Now, this game still has plenty of time saved to be squeezed out, mostly just through movement and better execution. Arciano's current world record has no less than 7 deaths, and he does not go for all of the fastest and riskiest megafuels. And although Arciano has most definitely taken the movement and cleaned it up a lot more than any previous runner, there are still parts that can be done faster. Honestly, estimating what a truly optimized run for this game would clock in at is very hard to do, since we just don't have the data yet. Nobody has truly sat down and grinded the individual parts to see how fast this game actually is. For now though, Arciano's current run is a great run, and I believe that any runner that decides to go up against it to claim the world record will have their work cut out for them. Now, my thoughts on this game. Let's start by talking about Starshot's movement, because frankly, it's pretty bad. Starshot seems to simply have one running speed, so when you press forward, Starshot will not really accelerate, but instead simply start running at max velocity without any sort of acceleration. This always felt kind of unnatural and came off as clunky and unwieldy to me. Almost like every time you press forward, Starshot is jerked forward a bit faster than you would like. He does have a walking speed as well, but that's rarely used and you would much rather just tap the analog stick to move Starshot small distances. The camera is also notoriously bad and is probably one of the first thing anyone will critique when playing this game. Now, this game actually has a very intricate system for camera movement, if you really get used to it. You can move it sideways, up or down, back and forth, and put it pretty much anywhere you want. Unfortunately though, these settings don't really help since you can't move Starshot while doing the more intricate camera maneuvering, and it generally takes time. So most of the time the standard camera is used and it's just going to be a nuisance when speedrunning the game. It will shift around randomly and rarely stay in the place you want it to be. Take for example these huts in Primitron. Once you enter one of these, it's incredibly hard to exit without the camera going bonkers and spinning around, trapping you inside. As for the positives, I really like the jumping system in the game. Having a triple jump really makes a speedrunner have to think about when they have to start jumping well before the actual jump takes place. This can also introduce levels of speedrunning aggression, deciding if people want to go for a single, double or triple jump over certain gaps, and in how much preparation people do before performing these jumps. The jumps themselves are of course not hard to perform, but there are a few very difficult jumps which are very doable slowly but take a lot of skill doing fast. I mentioned earlier in the video that the movement in the game is incredibly simple, and it is, but simple does not equal easy. Since Starshot's movement is kind of janky, moving Starshot around optimally is surprisingly difficult, which actually makes the game somewhat deeper as a speed game, which I like. A janky video game might generally be a bad game, but it doesn't necessarily make it a bad speed game per se. And I'm not saying this is any sort of revolutionary speed game, but just that I think for me, it's a more enjoyable experience speedrunning the game than playing it casually. The game also has some very fun and satisfying skips, like the jump across the platforms in Primatron or the bird death cutscene skip. But there's also a handful of annoying ones like the Earth force field clip, which we don't understand perfectly yet, and the museum skip in Ultima Crash, which is just very difficult, but can probably become more fun if you truly grind it out and get good at it. Another positive in my opinion is that there are no lives and no game overs, so when you die you just respawn at the last checkpoint. You can die as often as you want, and in my opinion it makes for a very stress-free speedrun where you are not juggling how many lives you have and risking having a game over to end your run. You can essentially always continue your run without any loss of progress. Overall, I really liked my experience when speedrunning Starshot. It was fun to glitch hunt and route, and although janky, I enjoyed it as a brief speedrunning project. And that's pretty much it for this game. I especially want to thank all the runners mentioned in this video: Scenic Reverie, Oblivion, Sekul, Arciano, Nathan is Bored, and Kefka14 for their help when writing the script, and just their contributions to the community as a whole. You guys are awesome. Also, thank you so much, dear viewer, for watching. As for the next game I would speedrun, and therefore my next video project, it will be about a game mostly known for its legendary theme song. Yes indeed, what about now? It's time to rock with the Biggity Buck Bumble. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.